Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive!
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
Who am I, and who are all these people pointing cell phones at me?
That's just walking through any town centre on a Saturday morning after a good Friday night. Yes, we are on to episode 2 of season 2 of Black Mirror. We are talking about White Bear. Let me just give a quick rundown. Victoria wakes up and cannot remember anything about her life. Everyone she encounters refuses to communicate with her, and they all seem to know something she doesn't. But what is it? This obviously focuses on corporal punishment, and we'll get onto the reveal later on. So, spoilers, as always. But Julian, what are your first thoughts then on White Bear?
I have not seen all of the most recent couple seasons or so of Black Mirror. This is my least favorite Black Mirror episode ever. I think it's not really bad, but it's definitely poor, and it's irritating. It does not bear multiple viewings. It feels to me like an old school Twilight Zone episode extended to an hour. This would have been a perfectly fine 22-minute episode, but at 45 minutes, it is really weak. It focuses on the wrong things. It's got that reveal of Twilight Zone where you're like, we would talk about it and say, this doesn't really make sense. Like, I get that you want a twist, but this doesn't make sense. This one doesn't make sense. And, I get why you want a twist, but I mean, it's all about that twist. It really is just a 22-minute Twilight Zone episode stretched to an hour, and it doesn't even look that much better.
No, I'll go one better.
Okay.
I think this is possibly the dumbest episode so far, and I am irritated this gets the same review score on things like IMDb as the last episode. This has got an 8. This has got an 8 out of 10 on IMDb, and I hate this episode for a number of reasons. And I'm happy we'll go through them. Some of them are just sort of like logistical with the whole thing. But some of it's just sort of, there's a level of cynicism that we accept with Black Mirror. This idea of looking at the darker side of technology, or what people would do with it and all this other thing. But I think Charlie Brooker's message in this is mixed, because it's again, I think you're supposed to ask the question of like, have we gone too far? But like, I don't know what the technology is in this. This thing of we're all watchers, we're all viewers, like we all watch through a mobile phone. You go, yeah, okay, fair point. But that still doesn't make any sense with this punishment, because she never learns anything. But more than that, it comes back to this thing I've said before about, like, there are certain films, we said it with Battle Royale, that want to make you feel uncomfortable about, you're watching kids kill each other, but come watch our film about kids killing each other. And this episode has that similar feel to me, where it's like, being a viewer of someone being punished in a gratuitous way is bad, but don't forget to watch our episode about watching people that being punished in a gratuitous way.
No, because you're right, but I'm not watching an episode about somebody being punished in a gratuitous way. That would be entertaining.
Yeah.
That's not what I get, because what I get instead is a character who wakes up, sort of has, the most incompetently done sort of flashbacks, that are sort of like, slightly digitized. I mean, sees a photo and like feels pain, physical pain, as it's like, I mean, it's like the worst 1950s movie you've ever seen, with its concept of cognition. And then, but comes to believe through people she encounters. And first of all, people are following her. People are cameraing her with their cell phones, and comes to believe that there's some kind of virus that basically she's in The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And the virus makes most people just observers with their cell phones, and makes a few people sort of violent and aggressive and want to hunt the people who are not. So this is pretty preposterous, but she goes along with it because it seems to fit. She's being told it seems to fit what she's observing. Gets in various skirmishes. They're not even Walking Dead level skirmishes, right? I mean, like, they're not that greatly done.
Mm.
Not that The Walking Dead is all that by any means, but I mean, there are even just like some rough shots, where somebody's, coming in the door and you're like, yeah, you could, I mean, grab that shotgun. You could easily do
Yeah.
something different. And then at the end finds out, oh, okay, I was being punished and I did this horrible murder. I kidnapped a kid with my husband, who then was killed, and I am being left to, after he killed the kid and I videotaped it, and I'm being left to reenact this day over and over again. But the day is not like in some kind of like Twilight Zone-esque purgatory, right?
Mm.
It's in real life in a punishment park, which I like this idea,
I don't.
but I like the idea of a punishment park, and I like iterative things. But so her mind is erased, and she has to go through this day over and over again. Why the hell is this the script that you've come up with? Like, this is a script that is very complex, involves several escapes that are, while dramatic, not exactly the most traumatic thing for her. I mean, at one point, I guess every day you see what I like? She could easily make a different choice on one of these days, right?
Exactly.
That just something is slightly different. The light is slightly different because it's a slightly different time of the year. And so you're seeing through the windows differently, and you decide to go for the gun,
Yeah.
where you did it before. The whole day goes off the rails.
Well,
Go
the
ahead.
thing you're talking about the gun being the weapon. One of the things that gets me is she goes like she's scared and she does all this other stuff, and obviously fight or flight. Her intuition is to run, like she constantly runs, and she's encouraged to run by the people around her.
Mm.
But like, I'll get to the logistics of this whole thing in a minute, which is just odd. But you're right. Let's think about the maintenance of things she's got to do. So they got the glass that gets shot out. She wakes up in a if this is going to be repeated, like I said, there's infinite yeah, she wakes up in a house that's there's all kinds of things throughout, like multiple houses. Okay, so there could be broken furniture, there could be broken glass. Like, you're just talking about the gun. She could get any weapon, and all of a sudden, like, she decks someone, or even one of the actors, or whatever. Like, and I know they try and sort of cover that off with the during the credit scenes when they sort of have the talk about how you interact in the park. But it just like she could kill herself. She could trip and break a bone. She could slip and break a leg or an arm or a wrist or something. So could one of the other people. Like, it's all so, and this is, like you say, so weather dependent. Oh, it's a lovely day, so today it's going to work well. Today it's torrential rain, or it's snow, or it's frosty, or it's icy. Like, this is
she goes a different direction, and the whole script falls apart.
Yeah, exactly.
She just runs between different houses, and the whole. I mean, it's so stupid.
It's exactly it. The whole thing. But the one thing that kept bothering me as we went through this, like, she wakes up and she finds the water because she's feeling, she's woken up, she's feeling dehydrated. She has a glass of water. We were literally talking about this before we talked about, dehydration, and she runs around the whole thing, and she gets muddy and she gets messy, and she's sweaty and horrible, and the end of it, they stick her back in the chair, zap her brain, see you tomorrow. She's not eaten. She's had one glass of water. and then they'll do it all again tomorrow. And they've zapped her brain, and they've given her some medication with it. Like it's just so insanely stupid. This is, I mean, and the point of it, I'm trying to sort of figure out the point. We've said this about some of the Twilight episodes. I don't know what the point is. You say, oh, I like the idea of this punishment part. To do what? Is it, so should this episode then be about the privatization of the penal system? Should that be the point of the episode? Because this episode doesn't seem to know what its point is.
No.
You know, I've read some of the reviews, and people are, oh, it's about unethical treatment and stuff. No, it's not, because the episode thinks actually that her treatment, it tries to justify it with this other stuff. It's meant to be about people getting involved and observing that punishment, and it thinks the punishment is fine.
I don't know about that. But I think it's about multiple things. I mean, I definitely think that, like, you know, you brought up the fact that the black mirror is the reflection of the screen, right?
Yeah.
And I was not aware of that, at least consciously. You know, I was thinking of, you know, sort of magic mirror and invisibles and this distorted reflection of our reality, you know, of the concept of a black mirror. But to the end of focusing on our devices, it seems to be saying that, or it wants to say, that our cell phones and our various devices, in making us observers, are making us more distant from each other, more cruel, more callous, and more able to observe this kind of cruel punishment and what this person is going through as our entertainment.
But then presents it as entertainment in the episode.
Sort of. I mean, but you know, yes, you're right. But also, we're kind of cruel and callous anyway, and always have been. I mean, like, go to the ancient world. You think they were, you know, nice guys? I mean, you know, I mean, I don't know. I have such a problem with this. But the main thing, my main objection is that the way it's told, because the way it's told is from her perspective, it becomes a mystery.
Yeah.
And the solution to that mystery is the most preposterous solution you could contrive. I like the idea of a punishment zone. I like the idea of iteration. I don't know that they go together. I certainly could go along with the idea of, like, a punishment zone that says, look, you know, you straight up murdered this child, right? Like, you are going to be hunted for sport by people with tranquilizer guns, and you are on a natural preserve. And so we're gonna, you know,
so you want an episode that's the Running Man?
Yeah, sure. You know, except just, you know, like, yeah, we're this is part of the joy of going to Yellowstone, is you might see that murderer, you know, who's like got a collar on and has to stay in a certain space or something, right? Or at least they're tracked and returned so that they don't menace any cabins or something. But yeah, you can indulge. But I'm saying, like, unlike the Running Man, the audience can pay to participate or whatever, and get that joy of committing their cruel, barbarous acts and feeling justified by the fact that, you know, well, she's a murderer, right? And I think that would then get at this cruelty to prisoners, right? And, you know, capital punishment, and, you know, how we say we write off people. People get raped in jail, people get brutalized in jail, people get, you know, hung under mysterious circumstances, and we just write it off because we say, oh, well, they were criminals, right?
Yeah.
That would then get at that one thing. But this doesn't get at any of that, because it's a mystery. It's an action thriller for what happened to her, you know? It's The Walking Dead, except with people with cell phones. I don't know.
No, I agree. No, 100%. I completely agree with what you're saying. And that's the biggest problem, is, like I say, it sets up this. I mean, I see why it wants to do it, because it wants to pull the rug. It wants to have this big twist that the protagonist that you have been following for this part of the episode, all of a sudden becomes the villain, as it were. Like, you're supposed to switch sides, or you're like, oh my god, I've been following this child killer, or, you know, for the whole episode and rooting for them, kind of thing. And you go, yeah, but that's sort of that's not a shock, because that's exactly what this episode's tailored to do. The problem I have with it is, like, this happens every day. Again, Like this idea of punishment, like
Mhm.
she goes, then she has her brain wiped, and she forgets it all and wakes up the next day and goes, "It's all again." And then she's presented with the information again at the end about how her and this boyfriend, kidnapped and killed this child, and go right. So now you're going to make her forget all that, so she'll
Right.
wake up again. So who is this punishment for? And it's not about the ethics of this thing, because I'm a bit like, so who is being penalized here? Because again, the other thing is it how long does this go? Is she like, right, you are penalized, you are punished for this, and you are going to have to do this for 15 years. So after 15 years, we're going to let you go now. Cool. Does she not notice that she's getting older? Does she
Hmm.
notice, like, I
Mm,
don't know.
mhm.
Like, this is what I'm saying. None of this makes any sense. And then you say, oh, I like the idea of a punishment part. Right. But it's the fact that this is the problem I have with it. If this was every other day or even one day a week, right? Today is the White Bear Day. Okay. So we're going to be chasing down Victoria on a Monday. And then you've got
Mhm.
these other killers through the rest of the week. But it's called the White Bear Park. The White Bear is
Yeah.
she's the only one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
And
right.
so I'm like, okay, so did you basically did you unhome a whole bunch of people to form this, because it's clearly a housing estate that they're running around. It's got a petrol
Yeah.
station. So what
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
you 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 kicked people at their houses to do this? Or was it going to happen anyway? Or did you build this thing for them?
Did you build it?
So
Or
how much does that cost? So how much has the
I don't know.
taxpayer paid to build this estate for you to do? Like, it makes no sense. The whole thing
Yeah.
is logistically stupid, and I hate it for it, because it thinks it wants to be clever. This is one of the dumbest episodes, because it just doesn't. It wants to be sort of this mystery, as you say, but once you get the reveal, you just go, "Eh, this makes no this makes no sense."
Right. Yeah, and I think you have to assume that she is doing this every day for the rest of her life, right? And
Yeah,
you know that they're never going to let her go. This is basically a life sentence, and there is a hellish nature to that. And again, that's another version of the story that I'm okay with. The idea of somebody having their mind wiped and repeating a day over and over. But as you say, I mean, you point out these logistical issues with the town and everything, and it's called White Bear, but they say we got to get to White Bear. I mean, was that town outside of the punishment park, or
well, no,
I
that's
don't know. It
it's a
doesn't.
that whole thing about the tower and it's all a fallacy. Like,
Oh,
it's
I know.
basically it's all Westworld. This is Westworld, isn't it?
Yes.
And like, they call it White Bear to trigger something in her head. That's the sort of the point. Because you said White
But
Bear and stuff like that.
okay, so I mean, here's the difference. Westworld is fucking at least entertaining as a
Yeah,
television show.
yeah.
Okay, that's part of the problem. you know. But then beyond that, so I mean, there's a version of the mind wipe thing that I would accept as kind of like, oh, this is an interesting take on, again, kind of writing off prisoners, or just torturing somebody in a unique way. But it's not really torture, is it? And you say, like, so you say, what is this? Who is this for? They they refer to it as a sort of show
Mm.
in those end credits sequence. Who's that show for? Is it for those observers? Because this is considerable resources are being used, right? At least, four actors,
Yeah.
are being used to enact this sort of play every day in which one person doesn't know they're an actor. Okay, that's an interesting idea, I guess, but to what end? It doesn't seem like yes, at one point she is tied to a log and thinks she's going to have her head drilled. But if you really wanted to punish her for what she's done, right, you would have somebody kidnap her, take her out to that woods, tie her up, maybe drive some nails into her body, or like really get gory, really mess her up, but then prolong her agony in some way, you know. I mean, you could think of easily ways to make this a far more hellish day for her, not just running for her life, and B, reflect in a Dante-esque way the crimes that she has committed, right?
Yes.
And none of this actually does that. Like, it kind of gestures towards it, but in a like Wizard of Oz kind of way, not in a real punish Dante-esque kind of way.
No, I agree with that, because that's one of the things. Like, when you find out what she did, that she was, and this is what again, and I know this is sort of the point, but again, it's not clever enough to make this point. Is that she was with this boyfriend, and between them, they kidnapped this child and they tortured her, and to get the reward, and that she was burnt to death or whatever, right? And she recorded it all on this phone. So now her punishment is to be recorded. Her, look, her being scared, as this child would have been, is being recorded, is being observed through the phone. You go, cool, okay, I get that. But as you said, there's no form of reform in that. They're not trying to reform anybody. But also, like, there's a point where they place that photo of the girl inside the photo frame. So when she comes to, she says, "I think this is my daughter." And so I thought, oh, they're really going to play this up then. So of I'm searching for the child, like, and so we're going to play on that thing of losing a child, that, like, that fear of loss and that sort of thing, and then for it to be revealed, well, you actually killed this child, and this is what you put the family through, or something like that. But even that gets dropped. It's just it's endlessly messy, because it wants to sort of have this feel, but then race towards this ending, and that lasts way too long. And Michael Smiley, who I like a lot, who's the Scottish guy, who I like in a lot of things. I've seen him in a lot of films, and he's very good. But this sort of like over the top performance that he gives at the end, a bit on the stage and stuff. If he's doing, if this was like a one-off, like that game, a bit like, this is like, if this is a one-off and he's really trying to drill it home, then fine. But he does this daily. Well, I hope he gets weekends off.
Yeah.
But like, if he's doing this daily, like, it would be even I think this would be even more callous if there was a show of like the monotony for him, where he's like, oh God,
Yeah.
But he's still taking a pleasure in this, however many days they've done it, because he crosses off a day every time, doesn't he, on the calendar in the house.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this just makes the whole system look vicious and stuff. But like, I sort of, this is what I'm saying, like, but so are we supposed to question the punishment or the methodology or the fact you've wasted millions of pounds of taxpayers pounds on this thing of, like, I don't get what you're getting at, because we know her crime was vicious and foul. So I'm not sure, like, what the point of this episode is. Like, I don't try and get what it's getting at.
Well, we know that her crime is despicable and the worst ever, right? Near that, short of genocide, or killing a whole bunch of people. I mean, it's about as bad as you get. But then we quickly learned that her punishment was made worse because her boyfriend was dead, right?
Yeah, he
and
escaped
they couldn't
punishment.
really get right by dying. So, because of that, they kind of threw the book at her. So then you're like, oh, okay, that makes her a little more sympathetic. And then when you see her paraded around, like,
In the
French woman
Pope-mobile.
with her
Yeah.
yes, that's right. Like a French woman with her head shaved for collaborating after World War II or something, having tomatoes being sold for £2, to be thrown at her, which, is a nice touch. You certainly feel for her. It's, that is, again, putting you in a position where you feel for her. So I'm not sure that it knows or that it wants you to know exactly how to feel for her. But you're right; it does sort of muddy the picture. But about what it wants to say as an episode. But the main thing for me is, I mean, you're doing this again every day. Why are you bothering to follow the script? Why not come up with a better script? It's boring, which is the worst thing you could say about a work of fiction. And they're doing this every day. They're setting those shoes like exactly right in the house. Why? Why do those shoes fucking matter? Like, but then you check off the days on the calendar. So you're okay with her seeing, like a different calendar date. Obviously, she doesn't remember much of the past, so you think that's fine. But then why isn't it okay to put the shoes in a different place?
Yeah.
Like, it wants you to
The,
think that this matters, that it's like smart and carefully controlled.
well,
And nothing
yeah.
in this script or in this universe, this park, is actually carefully controlled.
No. The you say about the shoes, it's the glass. It's when he cleans out and adjusts the glass. Like the guy
Right.
puts the glass on the counter and then sort of like slightly twists it, and you're like, why? What's it matter? Like it really doesn't matter. What I think would be more interesting from this would be I want to see whether families have to pay for this. Like, I want to see a family disappointed that they didn't see it because she's running all over the place. How big is it? And what happens
Mm-hmm.
if you don't bump into them?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we
Well,
had we
but
paid
it's
we
the
paid.
same script every day. How do you not know what's going to happen?
Well, it depends where
How
she
do you
runs.
not know?
Depends on where she runs out of the house, I suppose, doesn't it? But
But they have to get to that, to that station, right, where they have that attack in. I mean, that's choreographed. They've
yeah,
got a shotgun blast blowing, those shotgun blasts are fake shotgun blasts. How does that work either? Like all the weapons shoot different things.
yeah,
Some are clearly shooting projectiles because they're doing damage. Others are fake injuries, like the guy stumbling out of the gas station is presumably a fake injury. And then finally one shoots, confetti at the end. Okay, but how did the weapons work?
yeah. Well, you say that's a fake. Like you might have switched it out at some point to have the one that's got the confetti on for the final reveal.
Yeah.
But you do have two people in masks doing their whole purge thing. Um, One of them's got like a big, chicken turkey cutting knife. And I go, right, what happens if one of those falls over one day, drops that, and she picks that up and starts wielding it around? Like, or what? More importantly, what I was more confused about, what if they actually caught up with her?
Mm-hmm.
What if those two people with the weapons doing their purge best all of a sudden catch up with her? Because they'll be like, oh, I can't actually cut her or do anything to her because she's got to do a show tomorrow.
Mm.
She's a star without knowing she's a star. So
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it's like, well, we can't beat her up too much because she's got to be fit to do this run around tomorrow. Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
so oddly sort of contrived throughout the whole thing to keep her safe. But it shouldn't. Like, it'd be even funny if she woke up and had like a cut on her arm and like a plaster just stuck on it
Mm.
haphazardly or something. You go, oh, hang on, like no, she can be injured. Like you realise that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, this whole thing just starts to sort of fall apart the moment you start scratching at it, and it really irritates me because of that. Because we've had such strong episodes, and then you have this, you're like, oh, this is just the 14-year-olds thought up this, and you've gone with it. Like,
No, I agree completely. And I'm relieved that you feel the same way. I mean, you and I often agree on things, and
yeah,
I think we're more entertained sometimes when we disagree. But man, there are some people who love this episode.
oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah,
I can't for the life of me figure out why. I mean, it has ideas, and I think
mm,
it's exactly what you say, like a 14-year-old's idea of like, yeah, okay, these are some good ideas, 14-year-old kid I want to encourage. When you become an adult and you have some experience writing, you're going to avoid some of these pitfalls,
yeah,
right? Of jamming all this stuff in. And you sort of gently say, like, right. And if it's a simulation, and it's like, whoa, but I addressed that with this end credit scene where they're like, well, and if something occasionally goes wrong, then, you just don't get to see a good show, rest of the show for that day. Okay. But surely that's a majority of days. I mean, I'm a determinist. I believe that, in the same circumstance, most people are going to behave, the same way they did the day before if their brains were erased. Okay. I absolutely believe that. Having said that, like you said, you slip on mud. Like
yeah,
you decide to go the wrong way because an onlooker is there. Those onlookers are changing the experiment, right? And then this is like a better, metaphor for, quantum effects of onlookers than in anything. I mean, those onlookers are going to cause her to go in a different direction based
Yeah.
on where they are. So nothing is going to be the exact same.
No, exactly. It will change every day. Like you say, it could be raining, so she could actually come downstairs and just stay in the house for like 4 hours. And then it was like, oh, you didn't do anything that day. I don't know. It just, yeah, it seems so, I'd say, contrived. But one of the things as well is, you know, like you say, I think there are bigger points that this could really have gotten at
Hmm.
about the potential sort of like, privatization of the justice system or the penal system, and people making money from it, or it being or yes, people's punishment being entertainment or something. But this idea of the punishment fitting the crime, or even this idea of just pure punishment versus reform, or it just feels like you say there's no. It presents things to you, and like you say, you can make your own mind up, but doesn't present like a case. It just sort of goes blah, and you go, right, well, what do you want me to know about it? It's just there. I think that's sort of part of the problem is with this. It's so all over the place. It's such a shocker that it is such a messy version. That I'm kind of shocked. Really, I think that's part of the problem. It's kind of sort of like whiplash inducing when you're a bit like, oh, the last couple of episodes have been really strong, and then you watch this and you're just like, got no idea what's going on. Like, it feels a bit, especially by the time you get to the end, and I am just sat there
Hmm.
going like, I don't like this. This feels so undercooked as an idea. Because what happens if, let's say, worst case scenario of all this running around
Hmm.
repetitively every day, she has an injury
Right.
that takes months to heal. Right, broken ankle, she literally can't walk on it
Yeah.
because she slipped on mud or fell over something or tripped on a curb while running, whatever. Because she hasn't been fed properly for weeks, so she's weak. So her joints go, and she's like, well, what happens to all the people that are paid to do the play? Do they keep them on? Does the park kept open? Do people get refunds? Like it's. I
Hmm.
know it's
Hmm.
supposed to be sort of like presenting an idea, but there's again this that thing of like I just can't get past this idea of an entire park with security staff and gates and everything around a housing estate and a wood being
Yeah.
built to punish this one person. We have known criminals in this country that have done all kinds of horrendous things. And this, I'm not downplaying this crime. It's awful, but I can't believe that we would go,
Yeah.
this is the one that pushes us to do this.
Well, I could see certain areas of a park devoted to this kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and really, the problem is this car drive and all of this. I mean, you could devote a little area like that, the town of Westworld, right? The sort of like little town. It could be this area of the park. I mean, it could be the area of the murders, where the murder took place that she was found guilty for. I mean, that's enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this idea of the mind wipe, while I'm okay with it in a sort of different episode, it takes away from, again, her punishment.
Yeah. Exactly.
Don't you want your victim to know why she's being punished,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't that make it more hellish to remember this terrible thing that you did that you feel guilty about? You know, but then, of course, you can't have the play that works every day that is the same, you know. And really, all this is a Twilight Zone episode where you say, I can do whatever I want because in the end, it's a dream, right? I can do whatever I want because this is the reveal. I'm going to focus on the journey and not getting there.
Hmm.
At the risk of doing our thing of sort of like rewriting, get to this twist 22 minutes in.
Yeah.
Have that park be smaller, have it make a little more sense, and then focus on one thing that the Black Mirror does really well is focusing on two things that it does really well. It usually doesn't give you the whole story up front, but you figure it out, right? Like, it doesn't tell you whether characters are married. You figure it out. You figure out the situation. This fails utterly at that, and defaults into an older, model that doesn't work for it. And the other is that these episodes keep going on, and they go way past where you would normally stop. There's always another iteration, another,
Yep.
like years to explore, like what would happen to this idea next, what would be the next chapter of the story, in a way that we're not used to seeing. This episode doesn't do any of those things.
No.
It defaults to a kind of like Twilight Zone twist at the end model. And I think if you got that twist, halfway through, and then you had way longer to explore like the lives of the people who are sick of doing this every day, and I mean, even if you didn't, probably in that process you'd make it make more sense too. I mean,
Yeah.
but you see what I'm saying. I mean,
Split this into. I'll
a
tell you.
failure.
Yeah, it is, because I think one of the big things about this is a regular day. Yeah. You're supposed to tell that story that's the most important story, aren't you? But what this unfortunately does by the end of the episode is tell you this is just one of the day, and that's supposed to be the horror of it. Oh my God, she does this. They go through this every day, and she goes through this every day, and you go, okay, I want to show the exception, right? You're going to give me that one day, fine, give me that one day, but like you say, cut that into the first half, have that reveal, and show the monotony of it all being reset, and how people behind the scenes are like, ugh, got another day tomorrow, I better come in early to do this. Like, treat it like an office job, like a 9 to 5. But then also counter that by having activists either for or against this punishment, right? Have it so someone wants to come into the park to kill her, that they don't think the observation is enough, so they're going to come into the park. Actually have it where the people that are the performers have got to intervene to stop someone from trying to actually kill her. She can't know about this, but someone is actively trying to kill her. Go camping in the woods style and have people at monitors, Westworld style, going, well, this has gone a bit wrong now. What happens when it goes all Jurassic Park? Or the other way, where we find out that this is a one every day, and she's been doing this for 5 years, and someone's like, her time is done, we're coming to shut this all down and actively actually free her. We think this is inhumane, and actually try and give those two counter arguments as to why this should and shouldn't continue. It just sort of being a regular day feels kind of mundane by the time you get to the end.
Yeah. And, it seems like the most Black Mirror thing you could do is to do both of your suggestions, right?
Yeah.
Because what Black Mirror does is it goes through that process of, okay, this is next. So, we want to see a non-normal day. I love that idea of having, somebody with the cell phones attack her. And suddenly, like, the rules change, and it's like, what's going on, right? Like, why are these people chasing me, suddenly defending me from, the cell phone deck? And seeing a day go, and hearing how often that happens. Is it happening more and more? Maybe she's released at the end, and, the last, 5 minutes are her going back to a home, or, like trying to adjust to life again, having been an animal, basically in a zoo, in a park. I mean, all of these are implications that kind of thing that Black Mirror does so well normally. And it just think this almost isn't a Black Mirror episode. It's so strange.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing. It feels so off kilter with the rest. Another idea, actually, we've talked about what happens when she can't do this anymore. Have an episode where White Bear Park is actually looking for their next criminal to set up. Who needs who needs this kind of punishment next? Like, she's an elderly woman now. She can't keep running every day. So what do they do with it? Oh, we actually need somebody else to come in and fulfill this role. Who can we, sensationalize next? Have them talking to the press about how they can sensationalize someone as a demonize them as a killer to make it acceptable for the public to hate them enough to put them into this park again. I don't know. That feels more Black Mirror to me than what we get. Yeah,
and that would be sort of very cynical about both the press and how all of this works. that it's really commercialized, right? Like we've
Yeah.
got to find our next victim.
Yeah, exactly. Make it so you actually question whether that, how we get manipulated into sort of believing people are good and bad and not complex beings when it comes to these kinds of things. Um,
Yeah, and this kind of touches on that stuff, but never presents a full picture,
yeah,
right? I mean, you see with that showmanship, right? A sense of, how this has become commercialized in some way, right?
yeah,
And yet, you don't know. I mean, and it's okay not to know how you're supposed to feel, right? It's okay for a show to not tell you how to feel. We're fine with that. Um, it's that it's not in control of itself.
yes,
That's really the problem. Can I just bring up how Lenora Crenshaw, who plays Victoria, the main character, is not the best actress? Um,
no,
I mean, so we have talked about how good the acting has been on most of these Black Mirror episodes. Here, the lead is a weak link, and especially when she's crying at the end, once she's been captured.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's not the best.
What I would say is she was an actress that was going through a moment at the time. So she had been in a successful film called Fast Girls in 2012, and then she also did. Trying to find it now. It was remade in the States. Being Human. She was in that. She was the ghost character in that, about the werewolf, the vampire, and the ghost all living in a flat together. It's quite good actually. I recommend it. It's a good show. But she was having a moment. It didn't last long because
Mhm.
once she sort of got out of a certain thing, she's not the strongest actress. She's done lots of bit parts and sort of like she's been sort of side characters and things, but they were pushing her as a bit of a lead person at this point, and
Mm.
yeah, it didn't pan out. Um, which is it because you're right, because this is one of those shows where we have, I think almost every episode we've gone, oh yeah, well look, it's that person that's gone on to do loads of good stuff. So it was kind of
Or
weird.
you wonder why they haven't because they're so good, you
Yes,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. I mean, I'm talking about Michael Smiley, and Michael Smiley is one of those ones
Mm.
that again, his presence is always appreciated, and I'd call out Kill List. I think of a couple of others he's been in. He's in Luther. Um,
Mm.
he's been
Hmm.
in several things that I think he's very very good in. So he's a sort of although he's a bit over the top in this, he's actually I appreciate his presence. Um,
Yeah.
but I agree with your about her. She's not the strongest.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
kind
I,
of
I mean, I
something.
don't take offense at her, but there are moments where, I just have the passing thought, oh, she's not very good, is she?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
it does make me. There is one thing, and I want to sort of finish on this point, and again, it's about the logistics of this
Mm.
because
Hmm.
I was watching this with Alex, my wife, and Alex said when it came to the end of this, because obviously the boyfriend who is the actual killer, she just observed it and viewed it.
Hmm.
But Alex said, well, what would have happened if the boyfriend hadn't have died and he was in the park because men are more aggressive? And so she was making the point that they make this character of Victoria is the victim. Like she's on the run, she's constantly in fear for her life. Like she's a literal damsel in distress. Like she doesn't really become proactive until the end. This only sort of which is true. Like there's if you had like a 6 foot guy who's done this, he's more likely to run at one of those people with the cameras and go, well, I need their
Mm.
jacket, or I'm going to try and get the phone, or get whatever. It feels like this is predicated on the fact that she's a woman who is scared for her life. I wasn't sure. And when I asked Alex, well, how do you feel about that? She was a bit like, she wasn't that bothered. But it was something that even she observed as she watched it was like, well, this would have been very different if the boyfriend was involved, which I thought was
Hmm.
kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. And I wonder, it's not just a woman, but it's a woman who's relatively young,
Hmm.
relatively attractive. I found myself wondering about that's clearly part of the entertainment value.
Mm,
Now, what you point out, I mean, while Alex wasn't bothered by it, certainly we are meant to be entertained by a young, attractive woman being put in peril.
yeah.
And while that peril is never, I guess the rapiest that gets is her being tied to the log,
Mm,
but clearly helpless, but clearly with somebody who's more intent on killing her and killing her pretty fast, actually.
mm.
Um, I was shocked by, you know, I was shocked by how sanitized it was, actually. Like, you have a guy with a metal drill, and, I mean, there's a horror to that for sure, but he's intent on killing her really fast. Like, it's actually really merciful compared to,
Yeah.
he's like, I mean, it's a terrible way to die, right? Knowing you're going to die, but it's not torture. It's not rape. It's not
No.
any number of things that would be far worse. It's not even, somebody she was held at gunpoint and tied up. So she wasn't even beaten
Mm.
into the point where she could be tied up, which is usually true in most home invasions. That people are beaten up, or carjackings where somebody gets in a fist fight, where somebody's left in a pool of blood on the road. I mean, this is actually pretty sanitized, and
But
I
that's
was kind of shocked
because
by that.
because
Yeah,
she's got to get up the next morning and do it all again.
yes, right. But then again, it takes away from the punishment, so then you're in this weird script.
Well, yeah,
You're like
this is where,
watching a
yeah.
shitty Walking Dead episode every day. Like,
Well,
why
this is
would I
where,
want to do that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's put this in terms of modern penal system, right? She killed or was involved in the murder of this young girl, and it was burnt off. She observed it all, right? And so they choose to have this thing where the punishment fits the crime, and you're going to be done this day after day after day after day, whatever. And like you say, she's not particularly beaten. She gets scared, but then it's all wiped, and she has to start again. So fine. But if she was actually put in prison, like an actual prison, and the other inmates knew who she was and what she'd done, I think that would be more like
Mm.
terrifying, because those other, women that she's in prison with, like, oh, you killed a young girl. Oh, you is getting it. Like, you're getting shanked, you're getting beaten, you're getting whatever. Like that, you know what I mean? It almost, like you say, this almost feels like
Yeah.
a bit of a Get Out in a weird way.
Yeah. I don't feel that way because, I mean, she's the idea of having your memory wiped every day and living a terrible situation is way worse than getting shanked, right? I mean, but you're right that she would not be doing well in prison given,
No.
having committed this crime against a little girl. Yeah, but I mean, this is not, this is very far from the worst punishment you can imagine, yet it has elements that are weirdly more sanitized than you would expect and
Mm.
weirdly more dystopic than you would expect. Like, they're comfortable with a level of torture that is wildly dystopic, and yet it's really sanitized at the same time. Nothing here fits together.
No, it almost needs to be more futuristic, where at
Mm,
the end of the day they have the technology to heal her overnight. So in the morning
mm.
she's brought, so they could give her the kicking of a lifetime throughout the day, and then she's mended overnight, ready to do it all again. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I would say one element that we are not playing up enough is this whole like metafiction of the wall opening up and there being an audience. That's a great moment. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really remarkable reveal. It's like that metafictional episode of The Twilight Zone with the actor
Yes.
who sees the cameras. Um, that is a potentially really brilliant moment, and yet it's in this episode that just is such a mess.
Mm.
Um, so I when I talked about like the having inmates in a park, right, unarmed, and you're allowed to hunt them, with
Yeah.
trank guns or whatever, sounds to me like something that would get at, as the most dangerous game does, or and battle royale does, our fundamental inhumanity, right?
Yes.
We like to think that we're not, but then you say, well, where is the Black Mirror? Where are the devices? Where are the screens? Oh, well, now we've got. and pretty soon you've got this metafictional thing. You've got a whole town. You've
Well, we've
got
said this, but this is
days
where, yeah.
repeating and mind wipes, and
But
I mean,
this is where films
it's a
have done
mess.
this. Yeah, but films have done it. Like you said, that thing of like criminals being made to fight on an island and people
Mm.
watching it and gambling on it, and it's been done before. It's like it's.
Yeah, but they're entertaining.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I
yeah. I
want
agree.
I
Yeah,
want
yeah.
20 remakes of Battle Royale. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's so entertaining.
You say there's a film called The Condemned. We talked about with Stone Cold Steve Austin as the main lead, and Vinnie Jones is in it, and like other great people, which is literally about that. And I'm like, cool. I would rather go and watch that as a Black Mirror episode for an hour of have Austin kicking the crap out of people. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I feel, slightly silly at the whole thing, but it's still good. Anyway, we are
Right.
running to time. So, any final thoughts about the White Bear?
No, I'm just glad we see eye to eye on this as usual. As usual, you are showing your divine spark of intelligence, and we agree on the lack of spark of intelligence in this episode.
Yes. Yeah, great minds will come in and fix your episode for you. I think that's the point we're all making. Yeah, no, it is. The thing is, what's most disappointing, because we've had such strong episodes, but there's potential here. Like, this is one where if someone had stepped in and gone, okay, give it another draft, or okay, can we focus in on this one idea, or can we shift its focus from this person to that person? I think there is a really good story to tell here. I just don't think this is the best way of doing it, and I think that's unfortunate, really. And the fact it gets so many likes and it's 8 out of 10 is baffling to me. So yeah. Anyway, not much more to say on that. I think we've sort of covered White Bear. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. If you like us talking about this, don't forget we have got a whole bunch of other things. We've talked about our talks on the Twilight Zone. So go check out our trekking through the Twilight Zone every other week. We're going through the first season at the moment, but if you go to our Patreon, there's a whole much more. We've got the first, second, and third season already on there, and in addition to that, we're doing a whole bunch of other stuff to do with our main feed episodes: Transformers, Hitchhikers, How to Be a God, a bunch of other stuff, and we've got a load more lined up as well. So go check out the Patreon, link down below. But Julian, thank you very much for talking some more Black Mirror with me. It's been great fun.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we shall see you on the next episode.